Hey up, welcome back to the channel, and first off a heartfelt and sincere thank you to everybody that commented on that video that I made about the disaster, which was the removal of the fuel tank from my Royal Enfield Classic 350 in order to investigate an oil leak. You may be well aware that this ended up with me inadvertently breaking one of the unions that connects the fuel line from the tank to the bike. Bit of a disaster, and I was left wondering, with the current supply line issues, whether I'd be waiting months for a replacement part. But thank you so much to Glyn, sir, thank you for pointing me in the right direction with the correct title for the missing part, its part number, and the fact that it was readily available for 15 whole English pounds, no more, at Hitchcock's Motorcycles. So many thanks indeed there, really appreciate it. So me and Gaz are set about replacing the broken part. So just what I'm going to show you here is the fuel line that we finally managed to remove, and indeed the connector at the tank end was well and truly jammed. There was no way that was coming off. We had a real fight to get it off. So there's that. And the broken part to replace is called the feed cap comp injector, would you believe? So having secured that part from Hitchcock's, myself and VFR Mitch set about removing the tank again, which included taking out the two breather hoses, the electrical connector, as well as that fuel line connector. And that gives access to just above the rocker box cover, where the feed cap comp injector is located. It's in two parts. It was the upper part that was broken. That's the part that I ordered, and that's the part that we needed to replace. So it's held in place by two 10mm bolts, which you need to undo, and you also need to remove an electrical connector, and with that the unit should slide out of place at the side. It's then a matter of separating the top part from the bottom part, and this is achieved by removing a small metal clip. Once the two parts are separated, discard the busted part you can see here, and you can see where the nozzle has snapped off there at the top, and a matter of replacing that component with the new part, which you can see here. So to replace the unit, the feed cap comp injector, you just need to rejoin the new part to the bottom part of that assembly, resecure with the clip, and then place in the two 10mm bolts. Place the unit back on the bike and secure with the bolts again, and then replace the electrical connector. And that took us back to the point at which I aborted proceedings last time around. So now it's time to continue with our endeavours and to remove the rocker box cover and try and establish what's causing that oil leak. So to remove the rocker box cover, you do need to also move out of the way or remove a couple of electrical assemblies. So the first one to remove is the one you can see here, just forward of that feed cap comp injector, and that's removed by removing the nylock nut there, and just removing that assembly. The next one to remove is on the same side of the bike but further forward, and three 10mm bolts to remove here, and the first of which secures also two earth leads, so don't forget that. So once those three bolts have been removed, that bracket holding that electrical assembly can be moved to one side, and now you have enough space to remove the rocker box cover. So there are three 10mm bolts with rubber compression washers holding down the rocker box cover. There is one on the right hand side and two recessed ones on the left. Therefore, for the recessed bolts on the left, you will need a socket rather than a spanner. And once those are loosened off, you can remove the rocker box cover and just gently slide it out through the gap. Which is what we are doing here, and lo and behold, what do we discover? This is what we discover: a well and truly stuffed rocker box cover gasket, split in both places. So the oil leak fully and clearly explained there. And there you can see the rest of it. So in two pieces, with one piece left on the rocker box cover there and the other seated at the top of the engine. Absolutely destroyed. So how did that happen, I wonder? The only plausible explanation is that it occurred while the rocker box cover was being put back after the first service of the bike, and the tappets check and adjustment wasn't seated properly, and that the rocker box was tightened down on top of a misplaced gasket, causing it to crease, kink and eventually split. So I had the replacement new gasket kit, which includes the gasket and three new rocker cover bolts and three new compression washers, and I also had some gasket sealant. So we set to work reseating the gasket into the rocker box cover. So here, making sure that any remaining bits of residual gasket are removed and the top of the head cleaned up there, and applying a little bit more gasket sealant just to the area to the sides of and in the semicircular recess on the left hand side. Reseating the gasket accurately into the rocker box cover top, and we're ready to carefully replace the rocker box cover, ensuring that the gasket remains in place, and reattach using the three new bolts and compression washers from the kit. And once you're happy that it's in place, seated correctly, and all is good with the gasket, just sequentially, clockwise or counterclockwise, start to nip up those bolts a bit at a time, and when they get finger tight, you can torque them up. And according to the forums I looked at, it's 9 foot-pounds or 12.2 Newton meters is the torque setting. So final job is to ensure that all the electrical connections and assemblies are back in place. And once you've ensured that that's done, that's the two assemblies on the right hand side, the one with the 3 bolts, the first of which has 2 earth wires attached to it, and the one towards the rear that's held in place with the nylock nut. Then you're ready to replace the tank. And of course reconnecting the infamous fuel line at the feed cap comp injector end, and then the tank end, reconnecting the electrical connector into the tank, and the two breather hoses, the kinked one being the outer of those two hoses and the straighter one is the inner. The different internal diameters anyway, so should be easy enough. And it has to be said that replacing the tank was a far easier job than removing it. So just put it in place at the front with the two recesses underneath the front of the tank, locate on the two plastic wheel assemblies either side of the frame, and the securing bolt goes at the seat end of the tank. One's 8mm, the other's 10mm. And now the moment of truth. Prime the system a couple of times using the kill switch and fire her up.
So that's pushing it through without starting, you see. So it should...
Ready.
Leave it running for a few minutes.
Yeah. Yeah, mate, appreciate it.
Anytime, fine. So it's still recording.
Oh, it is, yeah. 1.5 hours. Fucking it'll take me all day, and I'm still wanting to run it right.
It only took 10 more minutes to do topics. Well, 15. Sorry.
And just a matter now of replacing the seat, and we're done, and she's back to life. The Classic 350 Reborn is reborn, following my abortive attempts at what should have been a simple procedure, and for which many will be a simple procedure. It would appear that I was unfortunate enough to encounter some overly tight fuel line connectors, and the rest is history. As for the source of the oil leak in the first place, I invite you to draw your own conclusions. You know what my rationale is. If you think I'm right, let me know. If you think I'm wrong, let me know. If you think the mechanic's at fault, let me know. If you think it's just one of those things that can happen to any mechanic, let me know. Either way, with the help of number one, my good friend Gazza, VFR Mitch, who made the job 10 times easier, because two pairs of hands and, more importantly, two brains are way better than one. Secondly, I'd like again to thank Glyn. Glyn, thank you ever so much for your recommendations and information concerning the replacement part. I think you went the extra mile there. Thank you, my friend. And thirdly, thanks to Hitchcock's for a very speedy delivery of the replacement part at a very, very reasonable price. Came with the stadium mirrors for my Royal Enfield Interceptor, which I've now fitted, and for which there will be a video in due course. They are a cracking bit of kit. So what lessons can we learn from this? Well, the biggest learning point for me, really, after the best part of 40 years riding bikes but not really spannering them, is that just because somebody says a job is straightforward does not mean that it will be straightforward, because there are two variables which are not taken into account there. One is the individual issues appertaining to a particular bike, and I had those in abundance. And the other is the individual talents of the spannerer in question, and I did not have those in abundance by any means. So that's the main lesson. The other lesson, I suppose, is don't be overly pessimistic from the outset that this thing is going to be a bigger and more time-consuming problem than it is, because this went from being, for me, months and months of waiting because of supply issues with parts for Royal Enfield, etc, 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 to 2 days of a job and managing to secure the part from Hitchcock's, thanks to a subscriber to this channel. And I suppose the final one is that, yeah, if you've got an extra pair of helping hands and a willing brain from a friend or colleague, then the job will be that much easier. Anyway, enough said, we're back on the road. If you enjoyed this, if it was of some interest to you, please click a like, please click a subscribe, and feel free to share this video. Until the next time, ride safe, be kind, and I'll catch you soon. Toodle pip.